There's a million things that I can talk about in between, but basically between the bleak and your expectation is how bad you feel. This is how bad people feel when you tell them that games are easy and they're actually not. Hello and welcome to another NihongoGamer video. I'm actually sitting in my apartment, which I'm leaving. I'm actually moving out of this apartment. This is one of the last days I'll be here, and I'm drinking coffee. So this is actually not an episode of Water Break. This is, I guess, the first episode of Coffee Break. And one of the things that I found interesting recently is that a certain Street Fighter professional player said that making fighting games easy doesn't help anyone. And I think it's an interesting point because, in a way, it is one of the main trends recently, hasn't it been, that a lot of games coming out have smart combos, or they've got a lot of the complicated features of previous versions of the game taken out so that it's more pared back. And actually it says it on the main menu in Street Fighter V. They've in arcade mode, there's a bunch of different versions of Street Fighter arcade mode, but in Street Fighter V, the Street Fighter V arcade mode in Street Fighter V, it actually describes itself as like a pared back, more back-to-basics version of Street Fighter. So we had BlazBlue Cross Tag with smart combos, we had Dragon Ball with auto combos, and we had Street Fighter with its pared-back bare-bones system. And it took like 2.5 years before we finally got second V triggers, and we still don't have second V skills or second super combos. Critical arts, whatever you want to call them. And then Samurai Showdown has just come out, and it's actually really pared back. There's really not a lot to do in terms of combos in the game. I don't mean that it lacks depth, but I'm pretty sure that it is pared back compared to previous versions of Samurai Showdown games. And so the question is, why would game makers think that making the game easier is going to help it sell? Now, as I understand it, fighting games had this like big thing in the arcade days. It was quite popular, and then it came to consoles and it continues to be popular, and Street Fighter 2 was a really big game, and then Street Fighter Alpha did okay. Street Fighter 3 apparently really almost killed Street Fighter, and then Street Fighter 4 came out and everyone jumped back on board. For whatever reason, the game, as far as I'm aware, isn't super simplified or anything, but that was like the big resurgence of Street Fighter, with Street Fighter 4 apparently. But whatever it is about fighting game developer companies and publishers, they seem to have this fear that fighting games are going to end up in the doldrums again, and that there's going to be another dark age, and they're all scared of the dark ages returning. And so we have games like BlazBlue Cross Tag or Dragon Ball that have these auto combos built in, and then we've also got these input buffers which are in pretty much most of the modern fighting games. So it means that in general you don't have a lot of one-frame links. But the long and the short of it is that it's reality, that a lot of these games have been made to be easier and more pared back compared to their previous versions. But at what point did developers think, okay, these games must be too difficult? Did they put out a survey and ask everyone who was playing these games, what do you think of our fighting game? Is it too difficult? Or did they ask a survey to people who don't play fighting games? They said, do you play fighting games? No. Okay, why? And then did all those people say, we want easier fighting games? They're too difficult. I don't want to play a game that's this difficult. It's too punishing. And what worries me is that when you ask people what they want, or why are they not doing a certain thing, it worries me that they don't always know what language to use to accurately describe what it is they don't like about something. So for example, I was working in music composition for a little while, and I would work with directors, and they'd say, I really want it to be more like, huzzah, ba-ding! And I was like, I don't really know exactly what you mean, but it was the job of the composer at the time to translate what the director was saying using whatever complicated directorial terms that they use, which seems to make total sense to actors. And actually, maybe it doesn't make sense to actors, but I would have to translate it into music because most people don't know how to talk about music. And I'm guessing that probably a lot of people who don't play a lot of fighting games don't know how to talk about fighting games. To be honest, I play a lot of fighting games, and I'm not even convinced that I really know 100% how to talk about fighting games. I just do it. And so if it wasn't fighting game companies doing surveys, it was probably more blanket research about people who play games in general. So surveys on Steam, surveys on consoles, surveys about what genres of games that people like to play, and in general, what's turning them off about recent games and stuff. And I realized it probably wasn't a survey. If there's any reason why developers might safely deduce that difficulty is the problem in their game, it's probably because in Japanese gaming culture, console gaming and PC gaming is massively well, I don't want to say it's massively down, but it's quite a lot. It's dipped quite considerably compared to the golden age in the 80s and 90s when Japanese games were really exciting and really, really buzzing in Japan and worldwide. Right now, if you work as a dev in Japan, or if you are a consumer buying games in Japan, you'll know that even though Switch is in the ads and it's quite popular, and every now and then we see some big new RPGs coming out on PS4, the big thing in Japan is mobile. I know it's a dirty word and people don't like to hear it, but mobile gaming is big bucks, and it's no simple platform. Mobile platforms specifically cater to people who like games that are not too difficult and easy to get into. Games that don't involve too much losing, and they're free to play, and so there's no risk getting into them. And so what I think people are finding in the mobile space, because they're not paying any money for the game initially, it's free to download, but then, you know, there are in-game purchases for better shields and better swords, whatever. What I think they're finding is that when the going gets tough, the tough goes shopping for some other game. And it's easy because all of them are free. If you don't like the game that you downloaded today, then there's at least 600 others on the App Store that you can go and try. Many of them very similar, but most of them probably a lot easier than the one that you've just tried. And so I think probably one of the biggest issues with fighting or facing console games and fighting games right now is that they're trying to compete with mobile games, because whether it's a mobile game or a console game or an arcade game, it's the same humans that we have to pull from. If people are very busy on the train playing on their mobile phones, I can't show you my mobile phone because I'm using it to record this video, then those are the same people who are not at home on their consoles playing Street Fighter for you and paying $60 to buy the game, and then another $100 for the DLC package that comes with it. So what I've deduced over the past year or two of looking at fighting games and what's happening to them in Japan is that it looks like developers don't know what to do with the bigger budget gaming titles that were successful in the past. And what they're doing is they're looking to the only gaming situation that is experiencing any success in Japan right now, and it's mobile. It's not the only one, but you know what I mean. The thing is, with mobile, it's very specific. It's not just that they're doing really well. A game can only have, in a mobile game, you can have only 1% of them really enjoying and winning and getting good at it. And it's still enough money to keep the game afloat, because that 1% includes a number of whales who will buy all the in-app purchases and all the downloadable stuff because they get to be part of the 1%. The rich. They get to feel like the celebrities of their game. And it's fine, because as long as that 1% keeps shelling out big whale cash, then that game has enough money to continue its development and keep going. And especially when you think about a lot of mobile games not being developed in Unreal Engine 4 or RE Engine, it's like, well, they can put out a game with no voiceover, with very, very bare bones start. What I'm trying to say is, it's not a lot of risk putting out a mobile game. But if it catches on because of a certain specific character who happens to be, I don't know, a cat girl with a whip, and she's got the cat ears and everything, and everyone gets into it for the cat girl, then it's like, okay, well, let's put more money into it because it's clearly doing quite well, and they can go from there. The thing about fighting games is that with the fighting game genre, the community doesn't tend to like the game if it isn't a finished product from the start, which is why it's difficult to impose the marketing approach of a mobile game onto fighting games, because fighting games just seem to not work when they're released unfinished. It seems to work fine for other mobile games because they're still a new genre. There's a lot less expectation on what they should be. But the fighting game genre itself has actually quite matured already. We already know what they're capable of, and we know that if the game doesn't come with a bare minimum set of things like characters, stages, combos, balance, costumes, V-triggers, V-skills, second critical arts, all of these things, then we know that something's missing and that this game is not already at its full potential, and that we can just wait 3 years for it to finally get the updates, and then we'll just play it then. But by that point, it's like, how do you say, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. By waiting 3 years to jump into the game, it's too late, because that company wanted those 3 years of profits to finally develop the game that we were waiting for. Basically, the mobile gaming philosophy doesn't really translate to fighting games. But this is the reality that we're faced with right now. People are expecting games to be free. There are so many games available that if they're not free, it's kind of unrealistic to expect people to shell $60 out for a game. Of course, The gamers who grew up with that culture, we grew up paying $60 per game, we know what we're going into. We know that we only have so much time and so much money, and so we choose and pick and choose our games quite specifically and very carefully. But newer generations, even if they do have the potential to be interested in fighting games, it's not what they're used to. They're used to being inundated with hundreds and hundreds of new games every week, every month, and almost all of them being free and having no startup cost. Okay, so that was all a discussion about just how fighting games are different to mobile games and how I really think that maybe this is part of the reason why fighting games have ended up getting so easy, is because of the comparison, constant comparisons to mobile games. And what is working in mobile games? Make it easier, make it easier, make it easier, because every time they make it easier, they get a new influx of more people. But with a mobile game, because of the way that they work, and because a lot of mobile games are, when it comes down to it, gambling simulations. If you've ever been into a pachinko parlor, you know it doesn't really matter what the gameplay is like. Pachinko is all about having some random characters from Evangelion or some random characters from Maji, Puella, Maji, Madoka. Whatever Konami's interested in at the time, they can just grab some popular anime franchise, stick it on their pachinko machines. But the pachinko machine itself has not changed for decades, I assume. I'm not even going to pretend that I know a lot about pachinko. Maybe it is more complex than that. But anyway, that's what I've deduced, is that probably the reason gaming companies think that making it easier is going to bring new people in is because of mobile gaming. Now here's the reason why that doesn't work. Because fighting games are one-on-one, which is quite different to Battle Royale. When you lose in a Battle Royale, you're one of 98 other people who lost. For example, in Tetris 99. Is it 100 people and you're against 99 others? Or there's 99 people in total, I can't remember. If you lose, you're just one of 98 other people who lost. You're not the loser. Maybe if you are the one loser who lost first, then maybe you are the loser, but you're 1% or 1.01% of the population that lost. Maybe that absolute first person who lost will quit the game, but there's 98 other people who don't feel like they're the actual loser, and so they'll continue playing the game. In Street Fighter, and I've said this before, you can start with 10 people, 5 sets of 1 versus 1. But of those 10 people, 5 people become the loser. That's 50% of all the people who started off this 10-person tournament. And all 5 of those losers lost first, so they all feel the full brunt of being the loser. Anyway, it's getting really dark now, so I probably only have a couple minutes to finish this video before it gets really dark, because I actually don't have a ceiling light anymore. I've actually moved everything out of this apartment. There's literally almost nothing left in this apartment right now. So I have to finish this discussion off quite quickly, but what I'm trying to say is that telling people that the game is easy is actually making the situation worse. Because when you set someone up to think that a game is easy, then they go in, and yes, the inputs are easy, but they still lose just as much because the people who like fighting games are still playing fighting games. And like I was saying before, it's very easy to be the loser. It's 1 versus 1. One of us has to win, and one of us has to lose. Unless it's a double KO, but you know what I mean. And this is the same thing that happens with people who come to Japan, who have massive expectations of what they think it is to be in Japan. Well, it's not that everyone feels this way, but a lot of people think that in Japan it's all anime, manga, and games, and that there's music everywhere, and people are dancing to Renai circulation in the streets of Japan, and that every part of Tokyo is like Harajuku or something. Of course, most people don't feel that way anymore, but originally, when people didn't know a lot about Japan, that's kind of what a lot of people thought it was like. So when they set themselves up for this expectation, but then they're met with the reality of Japan, which is actually that the work culture is like 50 years behind every other country in the world. Okay, that's an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. They overwork themselves. There's a million things I can talk about in between, but basically expectation is here, and the reality in Japan is actually quite bleak. It's getting really, really dark really fast. But that gap between the bleak and your expectation is how bad you feel. And so when you set up the expectation for fighting games being easy, like it's gonna be easy to win, they don't care about whether it's easy to play. They think they want to play a game that's easy to play, but what they actually want is a game that's easy to win. And when it's not easy to win, it's actually quite difficult to win, and they feel like a loser down here. This is how bad people feel when you tell them that games are easy, and they're actually not. And so the actual only solution that I can think of to preventing people from getting the wrong idea about fighting games being easy is 2 things. One, we need to help people come to terms with the fact that losing is part of the game. In fact, that's what makes it fun. Every time you've lost, it makes victory that much sweeter when it finally happens. We need to come to terms with that. That's a reality of fighting games, and it's very difficult to ever get away from that because one of us has to win, and it's 1 versus 1. 50% of us are gonna be the loser. Sorry, I'm just gonna see if I can turn on, I've got one light here in the hallway. Okay, this will have to do. I haven't got a lot of light. So what I'm trying to say is that one of the most important things for fighting games going forward is helping people understand that losing is part of the game and that losing is not a bad thing. In fact, the fact that one of us has to be the loser is what makes the game fun to play, because when you finally do win, it will actually mean something important to you. Which is why people who have played fighting games and had to experience it when there weren't a lot of mobile games, this was all we could experience. We grew up with this system where you had to experience loss because there weren't that many other games around. In fact, consoles didn't exist. We had to go to the arcades to play games. And so instead of harassing people and saying, why can't you deal with the fact that games are hard and that's the point? Maybe we just need to sympathize more with gamers who are growing up in this new generation, filled with hundreds and hundreds of games that are not difficult. And even if they are too difficult at that point, there are hundreds and hundreds of other free apps on the app game store, whatever it is, Android or iOS, that are a little bit easier than the game that you're playing. And then if you don't like that one, there's an even easier game, and then an easier game. Name one mobile game where you haven't won the first mission. It's impossible. It's impossible to lose on the first mission of most mobile games, because making the gamer lose on the first mission is the easiest way to lose them from the game entirely. This is gaming development 101. It's taught in class. I mean, I haven't actually taken a game dev class, but I assume that's what they're teaching. So that's part one. Of the 2 points, point number 1 is that we have to help people understand that losing is a really important part of what makes fighting games really exciting and fun. The second point is that we actually, I think, need to hype up the fact that the game is hard. When you look at other genres, Dark Souls, Cuphead, in fact, the main reason Cuphead was popular was mostly because of the art style, but then eventually it got really big on Twitter because people kept talking about how difficult it was because of a certain review that was written by a person who, I don't know, it seems like they hadn't played a lot of video games before. But suddenly, Cuphead wasn't a game about really cool hand-drawn animation. It was a game about being really difficult and like a time warp back to a time when games were really difficult. And that's really exciting. Let's all play Cuphead. Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Cuphead, even Super Mario and a bunch of earlier JRPGs that were less forgiving at the time. What I'm trying to say is that actually for a lot of games, a lot of successful games, hyping up the difficulty is actually a big part of why those games are succeeding. They're embracing the fact that they're difficult and showcasing it as an exciting thing that you can experience. Come into this game, which is deep and full of mechanics that you'll be busy for the next 15 years learning how to do cool combos in this game. And even after 15 years, maybe for another 15 years after that, maybe this game that we're about to put out today is so deep that you'll be a strong competitor for the first couple of years, but if you wait 30 years, people will still be discovering new stuff for it. Case in point, wasn't there like a new mechanic that people didn't even know about in Smash Brothers Melee or something? It was like for 13 years, people didn't even know it was possible, and then suddenly they discovered this new mechanic that no one had discovered for 13 years? That doesn't mean you have to learn it on day one. But now that we have social media, we have YouTube videos, we have Twitter, we have Twitch, we have so many ways to communicate. We also have a lot of ways to get it controlled by people who have other interests and marketing and business interests. But on the whole, we have a massive, wide open platform on the internet where we can disseminate this information that actually the difficulty is what makes it really exciting. And in fact, like a lot of other genres, being difficult is the draw. That's why people are gonna get hyped about this cool, new, really difficult thing that's gonna come out. That's not to say that I don't like the easy inputs of the smart combos and stuff that was in BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle. I don't know how I feel about the fact that there isn't a true successor to Central Fiction, but personally, BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle was a lot of fun for me. Definitely on a basic level, it's easier than the standard BlazBlue games. But you go to a tournament, it's not going to be easier to beat your opponent because your opponent is also using those easy smart combos, and so you both have to come up with new ways to beat each other. And so winning is still difficult, even if the basic input methods are a little easier. Anyway, sorry, it is definitely going to be nightfall soon, and I don't think this light is going to be bright enough to keep me lit up for the rest of the evening. Unfortunately, I don't have a ceiling light in this main room, so it's a big topic, definitely bigger than I was expecting it to be for this coffee break video. This was supposed to be a coffee break. It's turned out into a long, sprawling, important video. But please just take away these 2 points, and if you agree with them, let me know in the comments. I'm really keen to see and hear what you guys think about this topic. My personal opinion is that loss is an important part of what makes fighting games fun and makes those victories even sweeter. So sympathizing with a generation that wasn't subject to the brash harshness of the arcade culture, sympathize with the fact that they didn't go through that and that they have millions of other alternatives that are much easier, and help them learn the joy of what it is to win after losing over and over and over again. It's a special kind of sweet, but without some hand-holding, a lot of people will never get to experience that. So helping people understand that losing is an important part of the game, and secondly, that these games can be difficult, and that's what makes them really hype and really exciting, and that there's this cool new difficult game coming out. We should all jump on board and Twitch stream it when it comes out, because cool, have you heard about this game with all these crazy difficult combos? I'm gonna be the first one to learn how to do them. Honestly, I'm really passionate about this. I did not think this video was going to get this long, but I ended up feeling really passionately about it. So I'm looking forward to hearing how you guys feel about it in the comments, so let me know. Subscribe, share this video and all that great stuff. Don't forget to join the Discord and then click the little bell. I've said this in the previous video as well, but there's a little bell icon. If you click it multiple times or you right click on it, I'm not really sure, you can get subscriptions from everyone you're subscribed to on YouTube, or you can get subscriptions from only this channel. There's it's like a new version of the subscription bell, so please click on the subscription bell thing next to the bit where you subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all in the next NihongoGamer video. It's getting dark.